Okay, so a pleasant morning to everyone. My name is Mr. Salvador Namion and I'll be discussing professional education. I was um, very glad that your principal, that your advisor in this event, no, has extended his invitation to me to be one of your lecturers for today. And since I was assigned to speak about professional education, I automatically embraced the idea that I'll be discussing the different philosophical perspective in education or the different educational philosophies. A philosophy of education is a statement or set of statements that identifies and clarifies the beliefs, values, and understandings of an individual or group with respect to education. And that is the reason why we will be discussing the different beliefs, the different understanding, and even the value, no, or the values of its philosopher under the philosophy of education. For today, we'll be having different philosophers. Okay, so so we have three genres, no, of philosophy of education. We have the classical, we have the modern, and the contemporary. And the first philosophy that we have that I'm going to discuss is all about naturalism. No? So when we talk of naturalism in education, we have we have this explanation. Naturalism stands for the doctrine of follow nature, no, in education. It wants all. Okay, wait lang. It wants all education to be in strict conformity with the nature of the child. No? It stands for complete freedom to be given to the child in learning. He is to be left alone, absolutely free. No? So when we talk of naturalism, we are going to tackle about the nature, you know, the nature of a child. Let's say, for example, a child has an environment which is very hostile, an environment which is very combative, you know, people who are considered as street smart individuals, you know, and those people who are always on what we call, they're always on the go, you know. So more or less, when this child grows up, no, definitely, or more or less, should I say, the child will follow the same characteristics as the similar to the characteristics of the people in his surroundings, no, or in his environment. That is naturalism, no? And after naturalism, no, so we are going to improve, no, to improve the personality of a child, or so in Tagalog kailangan nating uh, maging whole, no, maging buo, no. So when we talk of the wholeness, no, of the development or of the learning of a child, then we have another philosophy that is what we call humanism, no. So humanism in the Philippines is very popular, no, in one school, no, and that is the Montessori uh, educational um, program, no, so, or the Montessorial educational system, no. So Maria Montessori is a proponent of having an education that is humanistic, no, by nature, or in other words, the school has a humanistic approach. In other words, the school is not only emphasizing the significance of the three R's, no, the reading, the writing, and the arithmetic, but then again, it also um, taking into consideration other learnings, no, very simple learning like how to clean the house, how to untie the shoes, no, how to clean the shoes, no, or how to buy, no, essential goods, no, outside the home or outside the house, no. So in other words, Maria Montessori is very particular with the holistic approach, no, of a child, no, holistic approach in developing the wholeness of a child. Although even if we already arrived, no, of saying that the child has already achieved, no, its wholeness in the field of education, there is still the tendency for the child to change, no. Sabi nga natin, the proof of learning is change, no. And another philosophy comes in when we talk of change in the behavior, no. But before going to the new, no, philosophy, as I've mentioned earlier, Montessori is an education philosophy and practice that fosters rigorous, no, self-motivated growth for children and adolescents in all areas of their development, with the goal of nurturing each child's natural desire for knowledge, understanding, and respect. No? So that is the Montessorian educational system. Okay, but before going to the new topic, no, or the new philosophy, I'd like to give you another example. Like yung mga babies, no. Yung mga baby pag mga first month, second month, no. Ano lang yung nakahiga lang siya, no. On the third month or fourth month, may tendency na siyang mag-flip, no. Ano ba tawag noon? Yung uh, dadapa na siya, no, dadapa na siya, no, and eventually the child will now start to walk, no. So yung batang yon, kahit hindi mo siya tinulungan, darating ang point na maglalakad at maglalakad siya, and that is what we call, is that what we call learning, or is that what we call development, no? Okay, development. So when you say development, without teaching the child will eventually walk, the child will eventually talk, no? For as long as the people around the child is talking, no? Kasi this comes in the idea of learning. When the child is not being taught on how to speak, the child will not speak at all because nobody teach him how to speak, no? Pero may mga iba naman na nagko-contradict at sinasabi nilang kahit hindi mo silang tuturuan magsasalita sila, no? Like for example, the children of deaf and mute individuals, no? Lumalaki silang normal kahit hindi sila naturuan magsalita, no? Growth refers to an increase in size evident through physical change, no? So we can see growth. If we can see something, like for example growth, it follows therefore that we can measure, no? We can measure that certain thing, and since we can measure, we can develop, no? Again, growth can be seen, therefore growth can be measured, and eventually growth can be developed. Growth is also used to refer to consistently growing and an increase in value. When your child increases in height and weight, then they are experiencing a growth process. On the other hand, development refers to a process of gradual transformation. But what is the difference between learning and development? No? Again, learning, if you teach the child how to read ABCs, no? Then eventually the child will know how to read ABC. When you teach the child how to count from 1 to 100, then eventually the child will know how to learn how to write and identify numbers from 1 to 100, and that is learning. When we talk of development is attained, no, without teaching a child, no? Like for example, no? Example kanina yung baby, eventually the baby will walk, whether you like it or not, the baby will walk, and that is development, no? And development is applying that knowledge to drive results and grow as a leader. So in short, we simply can't afford to build programs where leaders are learning but not developing, no? So in other words, leaders are not born leaders, no? Leaders are born to be developed to become leaders. In short, we simply can't afford to build programs where leaders are learning but not developing. So in other words, leaders are developed. Do you believe that leaders are developed or leaders are born leaders? Behaviorism, no? So from naturalism to humanism, and since change is evident, no? Whether we like it or not, there will be change, and that is behaviorism. No? So behaviorism focuses on the idea that all behaviors are learned through interaction with the environment. This learning theory states that behaviors are learned from the environment and says that innate or inherited factors have very little influence on behavior. Yes, no. So in other words, when you see some behavior, sometimes we obey or sometimes we follow, sometimes we copy the behavior that we have seen, no? That is the reason why, class, no, every school has its what we call some sort of behavior, no? Like for example, if you are a graduate of this exclusive school for girls, no, that is being manifested by you, no? Kaya ang sabi, siguro graduate ito ng ganitong school kasi tingnan mo siya manamit, tingnan mo siya magkikilos, at tingnan mo siya paano siya magsalita, ano? So that is an indication that a certain behavior has been copied, a certain behavior has been embedded, no? Then we have different philosophers. Let's have number one, Pablo, no? Si Pablo. Pavlovian theory is a learning procedure that involves pairing a stimulus with a conditioned response. In the famous experiment that Ivan Pavlov conducted with his dogs, Pavlov found that objects or events could trigger a conditioned response. As he gave food to the dogs, he rang the bell. No? So in other words, class, Pavlov theory is a classical conditioning. No? Has something to do with classical conditioning, and it's all about environment. That's Pavlovian theory. On the other hand, we have Skinner. No? Skinner, another operant conditioning, and this is all about reinforcement. A positive reinforcement is what we call reward, and the negative punishment is punishment. No? Operant conditioning, also known as instrumental conditioning, is a method of learning normally attributed to by B.F. Skinner, where the consequences of a response determine the probability of it being repeated. No? So to simplify Skinner's philosophy, this is all about reinforcement. No? So when there is reinforcement, we have two results. If it is a positive reinforcement, reward is given. If it is a negative reinforcement, then punishment will be given. Reward strengthens the behavior, and punishment weakens the behavior. Common sense, class. If you are being rewarded, if you are being rewarded, the tendency for you is to do the behavior or the action over and over again because you are rewarded. Like for example, if you study and get good grades, then you will be rewarded. So more or less, you really have to study and get good grades. No? And the opposite of rewarding is by giving out punishment. So if you are being punished, then as much as possible, you refrain from doing things that is punishable. You know? Another philosopher class is Bandura. No? So Bandura is popular in what we call social learning, no? Social learning and the motivation, no? Or the modeling. Again, Bandura is popular when we talk of social learning and motivation. So let's read. Bandura is known for his social learning theory. He is quite different from other learning theorists who look at learning as a direct result of conditioning, reinforcement, and punishment. Bandura asserts that most human behavior is learned through observation, imitation, and modeling. This reminds me of an example na I have come across, no, uh, in a what we call this in a YouTube video. The example was all about Badong, no, a student named Badong. Badong was so impressed of the way his teacher walks, no. So talagang the attention of Badong was no, was smitten by the style, no, or the walk, no, of his teacher. Hindi natin alam kung lava walk yun or tsunami walk or lava walk, no, basta his attention was no, was what you call this, was occupied, no, by the way his teacher walks, no. Nung umuwi siya ng bahay, there was retention. Naiisip pa rin niya kung paano maglakad yung kanyang teacher, no. Then after that, he started imitating the walk, no, or the lava walk, should I say, of his teacher, no. So we started imitating the walk. That is what we call reproduction. And finally, pagdating sa school, ginaya nga niya. And all his classmates were clapping, no, at Badong kasi they were impressed, no, of the style of Badong which he copied, no, from the style of his teacher, no. So that is what we call class, the social learning, and eventually the modeling, no? So we have the attention, the retention, the reproduction, and the motivation. Then another, yeah. So this is what I'm saying in class, no? So we have Bandura, social learning, modeling. We have Badong, attention, retention, reproduction, motivation. And then another one, another philosopher is Thorndike, no? So through his study on animal behavior and the learning process of cats, Thorndike founded the theory of connectionism. This learning theory represents the original stimulus response framework of behavioral psychology, which states that learning is the result of associations forming between stimulus and responses. Again, to summarize, no? Summarize what Thorndike would like to impart to everybody is that Thorndike has developed three laws, no? The law of readiness, no? The law of exercise, and the law of effect. That's the reason why sometimes before the start of the semester, the teacher would give us an assessment test, no? This is just to assess as to the knowledge we have for that certain subject, like math, for example. So kunyari ibibigay niya yung all about algebra, no? How to solve algebraic expressions, para alam niya kung ano na yung level of competency ng mga estudyante, no? So if there's a need for her to start from the very beginning, or hindi na, or mag-advance na siya. And of course, the other one is law of exercise, no? Kaya nga tayo may mga drill, kaya nga tayo merong mga kung ano-ano pang mga activities, no? Para lang ma-assess ng teacher kung nasaan na tayo, no? And of course, the effect, no? The law of effect. So, tatlo yung class. Law of readiness, law of exercise, and law of effect. No? Another laws class formulated by Thorndike are the following. Law of primacy. No? So, yung say law of primacy, ito yung kung ano yung una, yun yung natatandaan mo. No? Like sa subject, kung ano yung unang tinuro, yun yung naalala mo. Followed by law of recency, yung pinaka, the latest one, the recent one. Kaya nga lagi natatandaan mo yung una at saka yung huli. No? We also have the law of impact. No? So, sometimes, pag ang isang topic ay may impact sa'yo, hindi mo siya nakakalimutan. Even when it comes to teachers, yung teacher na may impact sa'yo, you will never forget the teacher. And of course, the law of requirement. So, pag required, wala. Talagang tatandaan mo siya kasi requirement yun eh. No? Requirement. No ID, no entry. No? Kaya talagang kailangang tandaan mo magdala ng ID. Kasi once na wala kang ID, hindi ka makakapasok. Then we have another theory, idealism. So we're done with naturalism. Now we have idealism. Because idealism is all about thoughts. No? So ito yung pag sinabing idealism, yung hindi mo siya nakikita, no? Pero naiisip mo siya. Kaya sabi nila, how would you classify God? No? Is God belongs to idealism or belongs to realism? No? Kasi nga sabi natin, to see is to believe. If I will not see that object, I will not believe in the object. Although when it comes to God, yes, we cannot see God, but again, His manifestations, no, the doings, the actuations of God is manifested, no, in other things, and that only proves one thing, that He is true. He exists. In idealism, the aim of education is to discover and develop each individual's abilities and full moral excellence, no, in order to better serve society. The curricular emphasis subject matter of mind, no? Literature, history, philosophy, and religion. No? So, ibig sabihin, sa idealism, pwede nating ipasok yung another theory which is what we call perennialism. No? So, ang perennialism, ito sinasabi na kung ano yung mga naituro mo ng mga unang panahon, ganun pa rin sa ngayon. No? The concept, the theory still hold true. No? The principle still holds true. No? Like for example, the truth about Magellan, no? Lapu-Lapu killed Magellan. No? So after 100 years, same facts will be given to students that Magellan was killed by Lapu-Lapu. For perennialists, the aim of education is to ensure that students acquire understanding about the great ideas of Western civilization. These ideas have the potential for solving problems in any era that focuses to teach ideas that are everlasting, to seek enduring truths which are constant, not changing as the natural and human worlds at their most essential level do not change. So that's perennialism. Again, for perennialists, wait lang, naulit lang. 17, same, 18, tanggalin natin yung 18. Okay. So we have essentialism, no? Essentialism. Ako ay applied essentialism. Sabi ko nga, anong topic kayo sa Prof. Ed ang i-discuss ko? Ayun, so naghanap ako ng mga topics and I've seen the different philosophies. Sabi ko, ito na lang tuturo kasi very important ito. At lumalabas ito sa board exam under professional education. So essentialism is the view that every entity has a set of attributes that are necessary to its identity and function. In early Western thought, Plato's idealism held that all things have such an essence, an idea, or form. To summarize everything we say in essentialism, this refers to basic or necessities or the essentials. No? And we talk of essentials, during this time of pandemic, we are bombarded with different essential goods, no? Na ito lang dapat bibilin. Pag lumalabas ng bahay, ito lang, medicine, food, water, no? Yun lang dapat ang unahin. Kasi ang dami namang bagay na hindi naman essential. No? Same with our topic in Prof Ed, no? Ito ang essential para sa akin. Kasi based on experience. Then let's have the belief, no, of essentialists. Essentialists believe that teachers should try to embed traditional moral values and virtues such as respect for authority, perseverance, fidelity to duty, consideration for others, and practicality and intellectual knowledge that students need to become model citizens. So for essentialists, these are the essential things to do to uphold the moral values and virtues, to have perseverance, fidelity, the duty, and the like, and to become model citizens of this country. Essentialists believe that there is a common core of knowledge that needs to be transmitted to students in a systematic and disciplined way. Okay, so